Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a good summer. Chapter 11 Deadly Air. Derek and Catherine sat on the floor of the room, while Rick, who'd been trapped with them, leaned close to Derek, witnessing the boy wrapping his cut arm in a piece of cloth ripped from his one piece. Do you think Eve's called for help? He asked Rick. Does he work? No, the witness said. Eve will not perceive a danger to you. Are you in danger? "What about the utility robot?" Catherine asked, ignoring the robot's question. "Will the utility robot summon help?" "That is within the scope of the utility robot's field prerogatives," Rex replied, straightening as Derek finished. He then wheeled slowly around the room, taking everything in for later recounting. Rex took his job very seriously. Derek had left two loose ends on the tight bandage and held his arm out to Catherine to tie them. "Can I trust you to tie a good knot?" he asked. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked. "Nothing," he said. She frowned deeply as she tied. "What happened in that office?" she asked. "You've treated me like your worst enemy ever since you came out of there." She pulled the knot tight, a smile touching her lips when he groaned loudly. "Ugh. Look," he said. "You've got secrets. I've got secrets. Why don't we just leave it at that?" "Fine with me," she said. "All I want is for us to get the rest of this together, then I'll make an emergency hyperwave call and you'll be out of your hair in less than a day. You can rot here for all I care." "We'll both rot here," he said, wanting to hurt her. She drew back. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." "Damn you!" she yelled. "Tell me what you mean. Why did you say I'd rot here?" "No reason. It's the hyperwave, isn't it?" she asked. "They won't give us access to the hyperwave. It's not that, it's what? What?" He leaned his head back and shut his eyes. "There is no hyperwave transmitter," he said softly. She pulled herself a distance from him and curled into a small ball. "You're lying," she said, but he could tell that she really believed him. "The robots have no contact with the outside," he said. "They have no spaceport for landing ships. They have no hyperwave, or even the equipment for making one. They've been evasive about the point because of the security alert." "Why have you waited until now to tell me this?" she asked. "I told you. You've got secrets, I've got secrets." "I get it now," she said, her eyes distant. "We're both free agents looking out for ourselves." "Something like that," he said. "But why did it hurt so bad to say it?" She stood and moved all the way across the room to sit on the wall opposite. "Well, I suppose at this point we must work together to solve the murder," she said. "I suppose," he replied, sorry to have started the whole line of conversation. Her face was hard. "After that I will thank you to stay away from me. We'll each take care of our own problems." "Fair enough. So tell me, if it's not a great secret, why the room sealed around us because you cut yourself?" "I've got a theory, nothing more," he said. "The city robot is programmed to protect human and robot inhabitants and to defend itself against anything alien, foreign to it. Apparently blood inside the body is fine, but once it gets outside the body, its natural microbes register as alien and set off the works. The city program has to be fairly complicated. The omission is obvious, and could either have been a mistake or a deliberate glitch to test the abilities of the robots and humans living here to control their own system." "Well, what do we do now?" "Well, once we get out, if I can get access to the central core of one of the supervisors, I can reprogram the core to accept human blood as a natural microbe on the body of the city. In this sterile atmosphere, it's perfectly understandable how such a glitch could happen. It could even be a means for the city to protect itself from infection." "But how did David die?" Catherine asked. "Could it have been blood loss?" Derek asked. She shook her head. "No chance," she replied. "There is very little blood. The cut was smaller than yours." "What's left?" he said. "I have to think that his death is a completely separate incident, unconnected to the blood loss." She looked skeptical. "Back-to-back coincidences, Derek? Deadly coincidences at that." He stood. "You're right, of course. It must tie together. But how?" He paced the room. "What other leads do we have? The only other connection is the fact that both of you came away from the sealed room with a headache." "We have another problem," she replied, watching him move back and forth in the confined space. "When I came in this body for the first time to find the body, it had been sealed up, airtight." He stopped walking and stared at her. "The city would never keep us locked up without air. It would be a violation of the first law." should we die. It happened to Derek. But Derek was already dead when it happened to him, Derek said. In fact, this just strengthens my theory. When the utility robot rolled him over to check for signs of life, the gravity pulled a little more blood out of an already open wound. The room didn't relate to David as a human since he was dead. All it's fixed its sights on was the infection. We're still alive and the city robot knows it. Whatever else this crazy place may be, it's run robotically. Ipso facto, we're safe on that account. Just the same, she said, I'll be happier to be out of here. Me too. You realize, Derek, she said, her voice low and heavy with meaning, that we are recreating history right now. We are going through exactly the same progression that David went through before he died. I know, Derek replied, but what else can we do? They stared at one another across the space of the room, the witness recording it all, and they may as well have been a million kilometers apart. They sat that way for a long time, far longer than it should have taken for a supervisor to show up. Derek spent the time alternately trying to think his way out of the dilemma, figure out what was going on with Catherine, and look at his watch. And the late morning turned to early afternoon, and Derek, who wasn't worried about the air supply in the room, suddenly became very thirsty and began to dwell on the possibility that the robots had either forgotten them or couldn't find them. "Friend Derek!" came a loud voice from outside the room. "Friend Catherine! It is I, Wooler, the philosopher!" Derek glanced at his watch. It was nearly 5 p.m., which meant rain was undoubtedly on the way. "We're in here!" Derek called. "Can you get us free?" Wooler called back loudly. "An roaring philosopher once said, freedom is a condition of the mind, and the best way to secure it is to breed it. Ho, Derek, we were held up digging in the mines, but I now have a laser torch to cut you out. I am here on the west wall of this room. I will kindly ask that you move to the east wall to avoid the torch as well as possible." Derek was sitting against the west wall. He stood immediately and moved over near Catherine, who looked at him with unreadable eyes. "Go ahead!" Derek called through cupped hands. Rek moved up closer to the west wall to witness the torching from the inside. Even through the thickness of the wall, they could hear the hiss of the torch on the other side. Derek slid down the wall next to Catherine. Their arms accidentally touched. Both of them pulled away. "Something's wrong," she said. "Something feels wrong." "I know," he replied, "but what?" The inside of the wall began to glow red hot in a small circular section. Then the red turned to white, and a rivet-sized section burned through to reveal the outside through a quivering haze of heat. Derek watched the hole expand, his mind racing as the torch began to etch the beginnings of a human-sized circle in the side of the room. He thought about headaches and about erratic behavior and about blood and its composition, and then he thought about the nature of the robot city. "Stop!" he yelled, jumping to his feet and running as close to the metal cutting as he dared. "Stop the torch!" "Derek?" Catherine asked, beginning to stand. Derek covered his mouth with his hand. "Get on the floor!" he yelled. "All the way down and cover your mouth!" "What's wrong?" came Wooler's voice from outside, the sound of the laser winding down to nothing. "What is it?" "We can't use the torch on the wall," Derek called. "I don't understand," Wooler said, bending down so his eye covered the hole in the wall and he could look inside. Derek backed away, getting down close to Catherine on the floor. "Is there some way to flush oxygen in here?" he asked loudly. "We've come in a newly manufactured emergency truck," Wooler replied. "I believe the emergency equipment includes oxygen cylinders. Get one quickly." "The rains are approaching," Wooler said. "We must hurry and get you out." "Listen," Derek said. "The city material is a kind of metallic skin, an iron plastic alloy. In the manufacturing process, a great deal of carbon monoxide is used as a reducing agent. I think your torch is liberating the monoxide as a gas into the closed room. By cutting us out, you're gassing us." "The utility robot has gone for oxygen," Wooler said. "You have my apologies." "You didn't know," Derek said. He looked at Catherine. "Are you all right?" "So far," she replied. "Are you sure what you're saying?" "David didn't die until later outside of the room." "It doesn't matter," he replied. "Carbon monoxide in large doses will simply work its way gradually through the bloodstream, bonding firmly with hemoglobin and starving the tissues of oxygen. His headache and erratic behavior were the first signs of an oxygen narcosis reaction, and unless he was treated to massive doses of oxygen, it would spread throughout his entire body, eventually killing him. And my headache? You walked into the room of his body just after they had cut through the walls, he said. You undoubtedly saved your own life by passing out when you did, for they took you out of the room immediately, thus limiting your exposure to the gas. Carbon monoxide is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. You would never have known what hit you. The oxygen is here, Derek, Wheeler called, fitting a hissing nozzle up against the hole. Derek crawled across the floor toward the hole. Come on, he said, waving her on. They reached the hole and sat breathing the life-giving oxygen. Derek felt the beginnings of a small headache, but he was sure it would get no worse. They emptied the canister of oxygen and began another. When that was finished, Wheeler returned to the opening. Rain is imminent, the robot said. How do we get you out? We have nothing small to cut through this, and our heavy equipment can't be brought up this high. At least not with the rain coming. Do we leave you for the night? There's no time for that, Derek said. I must get underground and report this information to the Central Core. The rain is also dangerous for me, friend Derek, Wheeler said. I must take shelter soon. Okay, Derek said. Stay with me as long as you can. Just let me think for a minute. Derek, Catherine began. Shh, Derek said. Not now. Think about your arm, she said. Think about where you cut it and how. My arm, He held his arm up, looking at the blood-soaked bandage and feeling the throb. I cut it on the dead piece of Robot City, he said, because it was the only piece of the city that would allow me to cut myself on it. He put his hands in his head. That's it. Wooler, stand back. We're coming through. With that, he raised his right hand, pushing his pointer finger through the small, burned-out hole. As soon as his finger grazed the jagged edge of the hole, it expanded to allow free passage. Next came his balled-up fist. The hole expanded wide to keep from cutting him. Then his arm went through, followed by his head and shoulders. Seconds later he was standing on the disc, its edges curling up to protect him. Catherine followed him through, and both of them stared into the teeth of the bitter cold wind in a savage vision of purple-blue clouds crackling with lightning. We must go now, Wooler said, his shiny gold body reflecting lightning flashes. Suddenly Catherine broke from the group, hurrying to the stairs. What are you doing? Derek called to her, but she ignored him, charging as quickly as she could down the stairs. Perhaps she's hurrying to safety, Wooler said, as Rex waded through the hole in the wall. Perhaps, Derek said, but as he ran the disc and began to take the stairs, Catherine had already run to the tram that was still dutifully waiting. She barked some orders to the utility driver, and the unit sped off into the darkening night. What is happening? Wheeler called as he followed Derek down the stairs. I'm afraid something crazy, the boy answered, remembering a conversation they had while waiting to be rescued. They moved to the emergency van that Wheeler had brought. We must get you back to your apartment before the rain comes, Robot said. No, Derek said. Get me underground. I'll wait out the storm there. Then you've got to go after Catherine. I'm afraid of what she's doing. A long streak of lightning struck the top of the pedestal right beside them, the metal clanging loudly and smoking. But where could she have gone, friend Derek? Wheeler asked as they all climbed aboard the large white van. The compass tower, Derek said, voice heavy with dread. I'm afraid she's climbing the compass tower. And that ends chapter 11. Hope you guys have a good rest of the week. Bye.